It's Friday, September 17th. Welcome to CBN NewsWatch. A surge of migrants wait under a Texas bridge, hoping to be processed into this country. Plus, ramping up security ahead of protests planned for this weekend on Capitol Hill.
This is a completely peaceful protest. It's an exercise of our First Amendment rights. Anybody advocating or intent on engaging in violence is not welcome.
We have a look at what the rally is all about. And the eyes of Tammy Faye. Her name is tied to controversy, but a big name in Hollywood is looking to reveal more of Tammy's story.
When I watched the documentary, actually, I got to know her as someone who believed that everyone is deserving of love without judgment.
Jessica Chastain shares the story coming up. All this and more are next.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin this half hour at the U.S. Capitol, where police are on high alert and adding more security ahead of protests planned for this weekend. Organizers are calling this the Justice for J6 rally, and it is in support of officers jailed for their involvement in the Capitol Hill riot.
We're standing up for the hundreds of individuals who've been charged, who've been hunted down, who've been turned into domestic terrorists by our media and our Department of Justice, who engaged in no violence. We're simply in the wrong place at the wrong time and historically have been treated with nothing more than a slap on the wrist.
U.S. Capitol Police say agents will protect the First Amendment right to peacefully protest, but measures are in place to defend the Capitol. D.C. police will have an increased presence around the city, and leaders have already asked the Pentagon for National Guard support. We'll continue to follow this story on this evening's Faith Nation and online throughout the weekend. The organizer is promised the crowd will be fully peaceful, but law enforcement agencies aren't taking any chances. A surge of migrants has flooded the southern border near Del Rio, Texas. Nearly 10,000 people are waiting, and most of them are from Haiti. Agents are holding them in a shelter under the international bridge, but conditions are poor and the heat is dangerous. Numbers doubled in a 24-hour period, and it has overwhelmed U.S. border officials. Del Rio's mayor is asking for more federal help. The Food and Drug Administration is trying to decide if all Americans will need a third vaccine shot. The Pfizer booster is first on the agenda, and Moderna's could happen in the following weeks. Today's meeting comes on the heels of more than 2,000 COVID-19 deaths in just 24 hours. CBN's Jenna Browder joins us now with more from Washington.
The battle over boosters is now in the hands of the FDA as their health officials weigh whether or not Americans need that third shot. Supporters point to new data out of Israel. This data showing an extra dose of Pfizer provides 10 times more antibodies to protect against the virus. And it's especially effective for anyone over the age of 60. But some at the FDA say it might not be needed for everyone.
This data is persuasive, is quite persuasive to me, that it will be wise to give boosters to people over the age of 60. I am not convinced that this data is persuasive to give boosters to everybody.
If approved, Pfizer's booster could be available as soon as late next week. It all comes as the Delta variant surges. On Wednesday, 2,000 deaths. And although some of those may have been due to data backlogs, it's still the highest single day in nearly 7 months. Hospitals in Idaho so weighed down they can now ration care, and a similar situation in Alaska and Montana. Back in Washington, President Biden is pushing his proposed vaccine and mask mandates and blasting Republican governors who are pushing back.
This is the worst kind of politics because it's putting the lives of citizens of their states, especially children, at risk.
And ironically, some at the FDA have accused President Biden of playing politics by pressuring the agency to approve the booster ahead of his announced rollout date. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
I want to take a quick look at a few headlines making news at this hour. 4 Catholic students sue Omaha-based Crichton University over its COVID-19 vaccination requirement. In August, the school mandated all students be vaccinated after the U.S. Food and Drug Administration granted full approval to the Pfizer vaccine. The school had allowed medical exemptions, but not religious ones. The lawsuit argues some students have medical conditions, and all 4 students have religious objections to COVID-19's vaccinations. There is a school bus shortage in some states, including Chicago. It's reported 10% of drivers quit in the U.S. leading up to the school year. The primary reason is Chicago's public schools' COVID-19 vaccine requirement. Some drivers do not want to be forced to take the vaccine. The remaining bus drivers are now working double and triple routes. It has some children getting home as much as an hour late. The mayor of Hudson, Ohio, wants city school board members to resign or face potential charges of child pornography. The problem stems from inappropriate writing prompts included in the 642 Things to Write About book being used at one of the school's high schools. You can get more on this story by visiting cbnnews.com. I want to turn now to the Middle East. This week marked the one-year anniversary of the signing of a peace deal much of the world never saw coming, the Abraham Accords. At first, they involved Israel and the United Arab Emirates, but they soon opened the doors to other places as well. Chris Mitchell looks at the significance of this historic creation and what lies ahead.
Although initiated under President Trump, this week a statement from State Department spokesman Ned Price indicates continuing support of the Abraham Accords.
We strongly support these agreements, and we look forward to advancing other opportunities to expand cooperation between Israel and countries around the world.
Today, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is planning a virtual meeting with representatives of the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Israel. Given the recent leadership changes in the U.S. and Israel, some fear the accords might not last. Former advisor to U.S. Ambassador David Friedman, Aryeh Lightstone, served as one of the architects of the Abraham Accords.
The Abraham Accords and peace in general is not a Republican thing. It's not a Democrat thing. It's an American thing.
When Israel and the UAE normalized relations, it became the first peace agreement between the Jewish state and an Arab state in 26 years. Within 4 months, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco also signed on to the Abraham Accords.
It is very rare that there's an opportunity for a win-win that can be transformational, not just for a country, but for a region. And the Abraham Accords is that transformational moment in history.
What makes these agreements different is the focus on including business, tourism, education, and research between the countries. That's helped open the doors to nearly $2 billion worth of business deals.
This has been a very unique opportunity between UAE and Israel to come with an agreement of peace and tolerance together.
What this has done is realign the Middle East between countries that want peace and prosperity and countries that want to continue to battle age-old conflicts.
Jerusalem Deputy Mayor Flor Hassan Nahum and Abdullah Bakr work together on the UAE-Israel Business Council.
The Abrahamic Accords, it's not about the Jews and the Muslims. It's also you have other nationalities, other religions that they're involved into this because we all live together.
Lightstone says the U.S. brought allies together, erasing unnatural divides and trying to remove the hurts.
There was an artificial line dividing Israel and other nations in the region and beyond. It just didn't make sense. When they can work together, it's going to drive more opportunity for more people in the region.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Coming up, a look at America's relationship with Pakistan, including millions spent with the hopes of curbing terrorism. We'll explore where Pakistani leaders really are placing their loyalty. Stay with us. For more than 2 decades, the United States has given Pakistan billions of dollars in military and financial aid in exchange for its help battling terrorism and radical Islam. But the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan last month has shown how unreliable a partner Pakistan has been in fighting the war. And now some are calling for the United States to take a closer look at our relationship and the subversive role Pakistan continues to play in the region. Our George Thomas is on the story.
Within hours of the Taliban's takeover last month, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan praised the Islamic fighters for breaking what he called shackles of slavery.
When you become a mental slave, then remember that mental slavery is worse than actual slavery. It's more difficult to break the chains of mental slavery. In Afghanistan, they have just broken the chains of slavery.
Pakistan's involvement in Afghanistan goes back some 7 decades, and their support for the Taliban has been crucial since their founding in the 1990s.
From the very beginning, its inception, they helped in actually branding the name Taliban.
Pakistan's intelligence service, the ISI, along with its military, helped fund, train, and recruit Taliban fighters.
The Taliban would be a shell of itself. Its insurgency would be wildly ineffective without Pakistani state support.
Bill Raggio, editor of the Long War Journal, tells CBN News Pakistan's military played a crucial role in the early days of the offensive, allowing a surge of new fighters to cross the border and help the Taliban quickly overrun the country.
There's credible reports of Pakistani military units donning Taliban uniform and helping to serve as advisors and fight alongside the Taliban in Afghanistan.
Hussein Haqqani, who served as Pakistan's ambassador to the United States, says the Taliban's re-emergence is a significant win for Islamabad, even though the Muslim-majority nation was ostensibly America's ally in the war against al-Qaeda and the Taliban.
Most of the Taliban leaders have lived in Pakistan all this time. Their families are in Pakistan. There is an ethnic overlap with Pakistan. And so Pakistan now has major say in Taliban's international affairs. And that makes Pakistan the winner.
Pakistan's interior minister boasting that they are the custodians of the Taliban, saying, quote, "We have taken care of them. They got shelter, education, and a home in Pakistan. We have done everything for them." That confession coming as some are now questioning Washington's endless appetite for Islamabad's con games.
Pakistan has always been the main problem. The U.S. and the West inability to coerce Pakistan to end its support for the Taliban is the primary reason why Afghanistan is falling to the Taliban today.
Lawmakers across party lines are demanding more severe consequences for Pakistan's subversive role, especially after getting billions in military and financial aid from American taxpayers, while supporting the Taliban's terrorist activities. Secretary of State Antony Blinken questioned on the matter during hearings on Afghanistan.
Pakistan is currently a major non-NATO ally of the United States, giving it a number of benefits, including privileged access to U.S. arms sales. Is it time for the United States to reassess its relationship with Pakistan and reassess its status as a major non-NATO ally?
This is one of the things that we're going to be looking at in the days and weeks ahead, the role that Pakistan has played over the last 20 years, but also the role that we would want to see it play in the coming years.
Meanwhile, 55% of Pakistanis in a poll this week said they're happy that the Taliban seized Afghanistan. George Thomas, CBN News.
A new movie hits theaters this weekend based on the life of former televangelist Tammy Faye Baker. It's called The Eyes of Tammy Faye. And while Baker lost her battle with cancer in 2007, her name is tied to Jim Bakker, PTL, and a scandal that made headlines for years. But there's more to her story. An actress, Jessica Chastain, has spent years working to bring that life to the big screen. And her conclusion may surprise you. Take a look.
Hello, everybody. Hi, I had heard about Tammy Faye Baker because I grew up around the time of their empire and their fall from grace. And I kind of had known about her as a tabloid figure. It's not over till it's over. I thought that she was a thief, that she and Jim Bakker had stolen millions of dollars.
Oh, the phones are ringing. Oh, praise Jesus and praise you.
This is my preconceived idea of her. And when I watched the documentary, actually, I got to know her as someone who believed that everyone is deserving of love without judgment.
Chastain is on the cover of the latest edition of Relevant magazine. Tyler Huckabee is the journalist who wrote the feature, and he joins us now. So, Tyler, you begin the article with Jessica sharing she's a person of faith herself. How did that shape her opinion of Tammy Faye?
Well, according to Jessica, she grew up with a very complicated idea of what organized religion was really like, and even alluded to some very difficult and maybe even damaging experiences with organized religion, which contributed to her understanding of Tammy Faye as sort of a joke, which is the way a lot of American popular culture saw her at the time. It wasn't until later on in her adult life, and after she became more popular as a movie star and a producer on her own right, that she realized there was more to the story through documentary and through some of her own research. So I think that her understanding of faith and her relationship to a spiritual understanding sort of gave her the impression that there was more to Tammy Faye than just what the culture was feeding her when she was younger.
Now, you suggest there, Chastain says that Tammy was likely portrayed unfairly in the media. Is this something you think she's trying to correct?
In my conversation with her, very much so. That was a huge part of her desire to make this movie. This movie was a passion project for her. Tammy Faye was obviously sort of unconventional in a lot of ways. She had a very loud personality, did not fit easily into a lot of the cultural boxes we create for famous women. But she was also a much more complicated and honestly much more loving and devoted and God-honoring person than she's often portrayed to be in the media and in a lot of the like Saturday Night Live portrayals, late night TV portrayals that you saw coming off in the immediate wake of the scandal that happened at PTL and then in her own passing as well. So she's hoping that this movie, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, will give people a broader and deeper understanding for Tammy Faye's life and legacy.
She talks about how at this time in society when Tammy Faye was popular, it was difficult for society to handle loud women, not necessarily voice, but more about Tammy's boldness, her impact, her confidence with God. What else can you tell us about her perception there?
I think that we've, as a society, have gotten maybe a little bit better since Tammy Faye's life and since her unfortunate passing at understanding that there is not necessarily one cookie cutter for women, especially women in the church. But at the time, that just wasn't the case. Tammy Faye was expected to be very much the sidekick to her husband, to Jim Bakker. And that wasn't really a place that she fit. And she struggled with that mightily during her own life and during her own ministry, caused a lot of stir, and caused a lot of trouble for people. But I think, honestly, history has been very kind to her. And it turns out that she was on the right side of a lot of really important issues that the church has come around on. And she was ahead of the curve in a lot of ways.
Talk more about that, because in the article, Jessica shares Tammy's ability to touch people with God's grace. And that also impacted Jessica as well, correct?
That's right. Yeah. Jessica said that she really hoped that audiences, particularly Christian audiences, would come away from this realizing that Tammy Faye, what really marked Tammy Faye for the people that she interacted with at the time, was this unconditional acceptance of people and who they were and who God had created them to be. She had an endless amount of patience and grace and understanding that was really far ahead of not just where many Christians were at the time, but where culture was at the time at large. She was really a pioneer of tolerance and acceptance, and that's something that comes through in this movie. But it was not something that was very well publicized or very popular at the time.
What message do you think Chastain is looking to share in this film for our culture at this particular time?
She said, she had a quote from me that made it into the article. She said that, and this is a quote from her, even if you feel unloved, even if you feel unworthy, even if you've made mistakes in your life, even if you feel like you've been thrown away by society or you've been judged upon, you are worthy of love. Tammy believed that, and I think that's why so many connected with her, because there was something in her that saw the grace in you. That's a good reminder to have someone see that. So I think that's what she hopes people come away with from this movie thinking about. It's certainly what I came away with from this movie.
Real quick before I let you go, what would you say to believers out there who see this movie coming out and saying, oh, no, I don't want to go back there. Why are we dragging this up again?
Well, I would encourage you, if you grew up like I did, with this idea of Tammy Faye as being sort of maybe a little bit embarrassing, maybe just an awkward joke of a person, if that's your perception of her, then this movie is for you. This is the sort of movie that you should watch that would give you as it did for me, a deeper and broader understanding of Tammy Faye's life that I think she really deserved, because she was very courageous in her life and in her ministry. And that's a story that really deserves to be told. And it's unfortunate that it took this long, that it took this movie to get that story out there as broadly as it is now. But I'm glad it's finally here. And whether you go to see it in the theaters, if you feel safe doing that, or wait till it's at home so you can watch it there, I think you'll enjoy it.
All right. Thank you so much, Tyler. The Eyes of Tammy Faye is in theaters this weekend. Tyler Huckabee is with Relevant Magazine. You can read more from Jessica Chastain in the latest edition. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Coming up, how one professional football player is getting creative in the way he ministers to people. We've got a sneak peek at Going the Distance. It's coming up after this. Well, the NFL season is underway, and judging by how some of the players are playing, it certainly doesn't look like they had an off season. That includes Seattle Seahawks receiver Tyler Lockett. He knows not only how to work the magic between the lines on the field, he's also working between the lines of his spoken word. His story is on this week's Going the Distance. Take a look.
So how can you see what it's like to be me if you ain't never been in my position? When it's easy to put myself in a box and try to live, than to go out here in this world and try to be free.
What it is that you want to say to be able to get them to see your side of the perspective, to be able to impact everybody at the place that they're at, kids, adults, anybody.
Like his oratory art, Tyler's impact with the football provides him room to create.
What's the mindset, what's the view you have when you get the ball on a return? All I see is open space. Obviously, we have a game plan. We have holes that's supposed to be open. You got to be able to learn how to set it up and learn how to be able to trust everybody around you. It's all about being able to set up the blocks. And so you just got to learn how to be creative in the way that you do it.
And you can catch Going the Distance with Sean Brown. It's this weekend on the CBN News Channel. On Saturday, you can catch it at 6:30 in the evening. And Sunday, you can catch it at 7:30, and Saturday, 6:30 Sunday. Both of those, by the way, Eastern Standard Time. Time now for your Friday Faithful. I want to leave you with this thought. God is faithful, and he is at work making ways out of no ways. He is looking for you to be faithful to him and his plan for you. With that word and this truth, I encourage you to make today a fabulous Friday, and be sure to have yourself a wonderful weekend. Do it on purpose. That is a wrap for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel at any time. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. Hope you'll join us again right back here come Monday. Have a fabulous Friday. We'll see you then.